Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to talk about all the new authors that I discovered last year, either debut or like a new to me author. All the ones that I read for the first time last year and ended up loving. Is this just an excuse for me to talk about Danielle again? Possibly, but I do have a bunch of authors that I want to talk about today. These are all in no particular order, and the first author on this list, on my new favorites from last year, from 2020, is Joanna Shupe. If you've been following my channel, you probably already know how much I love Joanna Shupe, but I will admit the first book that I read from this author, which was A Daring Arrangement, it was not my favorite, but then Charles from Books on Stereo pushed the Uptown Girl series onto me, and so I read it and then fell head over heels in love with this series and then this author. Book 1 is The Rogue of Fifth Avenue, and it's my favorite of the series and from Joanna Shupe so far. Book 2 is The Prince of Broadway, and then the third and final book is The Devil of Downtown. These are all following three sisters who are all amazing. It's Gilded Age historical romances, so it's set in New York City. I love Joanna Shupe's writing in this one. Her books are steamy too, which I always love. The heroes for the series were also a bit more on the darker side, which was amazing as well. One of them is a gambling casino owner, the other one is literally a gangster. After I binged and loved the series, I ended up finishing up the 400 series, which was really fun even though I didn't fully love the first book. Right now I have one of her books called Magnate. I borrowed it from my library. During my live with Joanna Shupe, I think she mentioned that this hero in Magnate is one of her darker heroes, and I am pretty sure Sarah McLean also recommended this one. It's one of her older titles from 2016, but I am also really looking forward to her next release, which I luckily have an early copy of. It's called The Heiress Hunt. It's got such a pretty cover. Childhood friends to lovers, one of my favorite tropes, and it's also got some matchmaking, so I am so excited to read this one too. Another author that I discovered in 2020 was Milla Vane. She is a fantasy romance author, although technically you could say I didn't really discover her last year. I read her pseudonym under Mel Jean Brooke years and years ago, but she doesn't publish under that name anymore. Milla Vane is a new debut pen name, so I'm still gonna count it for this list. A Heart of Blood and Ashes is the first book in her Gathering of Dragon series, and I loved this chunky book so much. Like I said, it is fantasy romance. It's got action, slow burn, steam, it's enemies to lovers, it's also got a marriage of convenience. It was so well written. I love the world here. I'm not surprised that I loved this book because I did love one of Mel Jean Brooke's previous books, The Iron Duke, which was steampunk, back when steampunk was all the rage. But yeah, this was a great first book. I will admit the second book was not my favorite, but I'm still really looking forward to the rest of the series. I really enjoy her writing, and I hope that she continues to write more under Milla Vane even after the series is over. Next is another debut author, Rosie Danan, who wrote The Roommate. I know a lot of people either love this book or hate this book. I really enjoyed this one. It is the roommate's trope. It's got a ton of forced proximity, and I mean, the hero is a porn star. There was no way that I wouldn't be reading this book, and I did, and ended up loving it. It was just a lot of fun to read. Rosie Danan wrote such charming characters in this story. The romance was hot. There was so much great tension. I love the sex positivity here, and I am so excited for Rosie's next book. It's like a spin-off of this book. It's about one of the secondary characters. The heroine in The Intimacy Experiment is Naomi, who was one of Josh's former co-workers. So that second book of Rosie's has a sex worker heroine and a rabbi hero, which is a combination that I never would have come up with, and I'm so excited to read it. An author that has been publishing for quite a while and that I finally dived into was Sherry Thomas. I read a couple of her historicals and just fell in love. It was mainly due to Beguiling the Beauty, which was my first book from Sherry Thomas. It's the first book in the Fitzhugh trilogy. I also loved book 3. We don't need to talk about book 2, but book 1 is such a good revenge romance. The heroine wants revenge against the hero who made some really awful comments about her behind her back, so she wants to make him fall in love with her while she is hiding her identity from him, and of course she ends up falling in love with him as well. But I was just in awe of the writing. Like, everyone always praises Sherry Thomas's writing, and now I can totally see why. It's just really great storytelling, and the angst is through the roof. Sherry Thomas has definitely got to be the queen of angst in historical romance. My heart was just hurting while reading this book and pretty much every other book of hers. Tempting the Bride book 3 is enemies to lovers, and it's also got the amnesia trope. Delicious is a foodie historical romance with a chef heroine. All of her stories are all so unique, or she takes these common tropes and just twists them around to make them unique. I'm just so glad that I finally read her. She has a humongous backlist that I'm slowly making my way through, and plus she has that mystery series based off of Sherlock Holmes, which I will eventually get to someday. Another author whose pen name I read for the first time, discovered for the first time last year, was Nina West, who also is known as K.A. Tucker. I did a whole video where I read a bunch of popular romance authors and also their pen names, and for Nina West I was so surprised that I ended up loving her series. It's not the series that I have in paperback, though I did enjoy Sweet Mercy. It's like a good mafia romance, like a good start to this mafia series that I really need to continue someday, but the one that made me really hooked onto Nina West was her Wolf Hotel series, which is 4 books. It's erotica. It follows one couple. It's almost forbidden love between a boss and assistant. The new adult heroine finds a job in Alaska working for this hotel, and she ends up falling for the hotel's CEO owner. So he's filthy rich, she's a young 20-something-year-old. It was a really hot romance. My favorite books in the series were books 1 and 4, and I really liked how the story took some unexpected turns. So it's not quite your typical CEO billionaire erotic romance. I binged all 4 books in about 3 days. It was really surprising that the series was written by K.A. Tucker, even under a pen name. I can see why she decided to write these under a pen name, because they're definitely erotica. I hope she continues to write more hot romances though. I mean, I do love her K.A. Tucker books, but Nina West was really great as well. I don't think she's writing anymore under Nina West though. She's just gonna release them under her K.A. Tucker name, because like this book, the 3rd book in the series that she started under Nina West, she has re-released them under her K.A. Tucker name. Another author that I discovered and loved last year and ended up binging like 15 more of her books and novellas was Alexandria House. This author was another Charles recommendation. I started with her Them Boys series. I read Set and just loved it so much. It's one of my new favorite novellas. It's a trilogy of novellas about these 3 brothers. Set was my favorite. The way that Alexandria House writes her heroes, her over-the-top obsessed heroes, is my kryptonite. I love reading those kinds of heroes, especially in my smutty novellas, and the Them Boys series had such good smut. So far my favorites from Alexandria House are this Them Boys series and also the McLean Brothers series, which is another 4-book series about 4 brothers. There's a famous rapper brother, a famous basketball player. There's also a Marriage of Convenience in that series. It's just so great and so much fun. I love her family dynamics. They're always hilarious and so full of love. If you love shorter reads, if you love family sagas, family dynamics in your series, you definitely need to read Alexandria House. Another historical romance author that I discovered last year was Diana Biller. The Widow of Rose House is her debut. She published it in 2019. She hasn't released anything since then, but she does have an upcoming release this year in 2021. It's another historical romance that I am really excited about, even though I don't love that cover. But The Widow of Rose House was a great debut. It's Gilded Age again, so set in New York. It's a gothic romance as well, with a little haunted mansion that the heroine gets ownership of. Going into this one, I wasn't expecting too much with the romance because, I mean, it's trade paperback. It doesn't look like your typical historical romance, but I adore the romance here mainly because the hero is such a cinnamon roll hero. He is the sweetest guy. It's basically insta-love for him. He's a professor. He's been hired by the heroine to try to investigate these ghosts in her mansion, and he just adores the heroine, which I'm always here for. I've seen a lot of love for this book, for this hero especially, and now I can totally understand why. If you have read and loved this book, Diana Biller also wrote a little short story for Sam's parents' love story. That short story was so cute, and now I really need Diana Biller to write pretty much all the romances, all the stories for the rest of Sam's family. Another new author that I discovered and loved was Adriana Herrera with her Dreamer series. These first 3 books in the series are MM, the 4th one is MF, but these 3 were fantastic. My favorite one is still the first book. American Dreamer is a bit of a foodie romance. I'm always a sucker for characters who know how to cook or bake. One of the heroes owns and runs a food truck, and the other hero is a librarian. fiction. All her books have such good romances, like they're heartwarming, they're sweet, they're emotional. The writing is fresh and fun. I really loved it, and I'm so excited that Adriana Herrera is writing some historical romances in the future. Like, these are all contemporary, but she has some historicals coming up, and I cannot wait to read them. I read one of her novellas that she wrote in the Duke I'd Like to F anthology. Her short story in that one was really great. Another new author that I discovered last year was Teagan Hunter. I read her texting series and 2 books from her Slice series. In general, most of her books are really fun. They're rom-coms, a little bit silly. When I need something lighthearted, her books hit the spot. They're not all hits, but I have really enjoyed some of them. My favorite is the first book in the texting series, Let's Get Textual, mainly because there's a freaking baby goat in that romance. This is also an epistolary romance. The main characters first communicate through text. They don't even meet each other yet. One of them texts the other through a wrong number and they just keep chatting with each other. It's super cute and adorable. I just had so much fun reading this one, as well as a couple other of her books. I am really sad though that my library only has the first 2 books in the Slice series. Like, they have the whole texting series, which I binged, but they don't have the complete Slice series. Hopefully they'll get it someday, but right now that's all I've read from her. I also read Emma Scott for the first time last year with her Full Tilt duet, which was a roller coaster of emotions. Book 1 is Full Tilt, book 2 is All In, and I surprisingly did not cry for book 1, but I did cry for book 2. It's a very emotional duet. The heroine is going through a rough time. She is a guitarist with a band that's becoming really famous, but the fame is just tearing her apart. Her life is spiraling, and this is when she meets the hero, who is also going through something very serious. I won't really say too much more about it because humongous spoilers, but I will say I totally saw what was coming in book 2. Even though it was really sad, I still really like the way that this duet played out. Emma Scott really hits you in the gut with this duet. I haven't had a chance to read her other books, but I feel like they'll also be super emotional as well. I'm not sure what book I want to try from her next, but I'm definitely keeping her in mind in the back burner for when I need something super emotional and tear-jerking to read. Diana Quincy released her first Avon romance last year, and I enjoyed it so much. Her Night with the Duke is the first book in a new series, and it is a delicious forbidden romance. I never really thought about this kind of forbidden romance. The heroine is a stepmother, and the hero is her stepdaughter's intended. They're not engaged officially or anything, but it is kind of assumed that this hero will propose. Unfortunately, the main characters here first met before the whole announcement, and they shared this really passionate night together without knowing who the other person was. It was a hot read. It was great. So much tension and chemistry. The forbidden romance part was well written, and I'm so excited about the next book, which is about a viscount who is this hero's friend. This book is Diana Quincy's first Avon release, but she actually does have a couple backlist titles that I do want to eventually try because I really enjoyed the writing in this book. I read Milla Sosa for the first time last year. I'm gonna call myself out. I actually own a couple arcs from her previous books that I just never got to. So my first book from her was The Worst Best Man, which is a great enemies to lovers romance. I love the main characters here. The banter between them was so great. I love the whole there's only one room and only one bed trope. It was just a really great rom-com that I had so much fun reading. I love the family dynamics and the female friendship in this story. The male friendship was really great as well. This hero has a really great friendship with his best friend who is getting a book next. I'm kicking myself for not reading those arcs from Milla Sosa sooner. Actually, not even sooner, just reading them at all. So I definitely need to go back through her backlist and read some of her earlier books. Next up, like a lot of people, I ended up loving Emily Henry's adult debut romance. Beach Read was so good. I mean, it was hilarious, it was fun, it was emotional. I don't have my copy right now. I think I lent it to my cousin. I'm hoping that's the reason why I can't find my paperback, but this is such a fantastic romance. A lot of people do consider it more a woman's fiction, but I was really happy with the romance. The main characters were fantastic. I mean, I literally laughed out loud while I was reading this one, though I wouldn't consider it a rom-com because it does delve into a lot of more serious issues. Still, it is a very well-rounded read. It'll make you laugh, it'll make your heart ache. It was one of my favorite books from 2020. I loved Emily Henry's writing so much. Maybe not enough to give her YAs a try, but she has another adult book coming out next and I'm so excited to read it. I also read Kelly Siskind for the first time last year with Don't Go Stealing My Heart. I actually owned the first book in the series but just never read it, so I started with book 2. All the books in the Showman series are totally fine to read as standalones. So far I've read books 2 and 4. I know, reading out of order, I'm surprised at myself as well, but Don't Go Stealing My Heart was fantastic. I also really enjoyed The Knockout Rule. Her stories are just all so fun and unique. I mean, book 1 has a magician hero, book 2 has a thief, a Robin Hood thief for a heroine, book 3 has a DJ hero and a heroine who wants to become a DJ herself, and book 4 has a nerdy boxer who is helping his manager try to woo the heroine. I've just really enjoyed the books that I've read so far in the series. I'm definitely going to be reading the rest of the series. I'm just a little bit behind on things, but if you want something unique and fun, this series is great. And saving the best for last, my new favorite author that I discovered in 2020, of course, is Danielle Lowry. I am just a little bit obsessed with her Maid series, her Mafia romance series. These are the 3 books that are out so far. Book 1 is a forbidden romance, book 2 and my favorite is enemies to lovers, and book 3 is a kidnapping mafia romance. I just loved her love stories here. The romances are intense, they are spicy, lots of steam. The heroes are totally gone for the heroines, even though it does take a while for them to show it, and the heroines are just so awesome and lovable. I mean, I love the series so much. I gave 2 of them 5 stars and the other 4.5 stars. The writing is fantastic. It's a little dark, not too intensely dark, but good enough for a mafia romance. Sadly though, these are the only books out so far from this author and I'm just dying for her next books. She's continuing the Maid series with book 4, Sebastian. I cannot wait for his book. And she also has a standalone that she teased at the end of The Darkest Temptation that I'm dying for. There's only 1 chapter, but I'm already in love with that story. So she's a new top favorite author. I will read anything that she releases from now on. So that's my list of some new favorite authors that I discovered last year that I definitely need to continue reading this year. Let me know if you read any of these books or if you have some of your new authors that you discovered from last year that you're hoping to get to again this year. As always, links to these books will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all next time. Bye!